Another foundational concept that you need for your privacy career is the CIA Triad. CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and these are really pillars of cybersecurity. There is a lot of overlap between privacy and cybersecurity, and therefore, in order to be an effective privacy professional, you need to understand a little bit about cyber. So in this and the next lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity and risk management. Again, these are foundational concepts that you need to really understand what you're doing as a privacy professional. We will start by defining what information security is. We will look at the difference between information security and cybersecurity. They overlap, but there are some differences. We will then compare and contrast the CIA Triad with the DAD Triad. We will return to the term control, and we will spend a little bit more time talking about types of controls. What is information security? In short, it is the protection of information's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And those terms may look self-explanatory, but in the context of cybersecurity, there's a little bit of nuance there that's important to understand. And so we will return to these terms in just a moment. Another thing that's important to understand is that information security, or InfoSec, is a little different than cybersecurity. They refer to two different things. These are overlapping terms. Information security is an umbrella term that includes cybersecurity. This is the securing of all information, regardless of its format. And so information security is concerned with protecting electronic, paper, and oral information. You can have an oral breach. For example, if you're talking with a colleague at the water cooler in your office, and you mention something that you're working on, and a nearby colleague hears it, if that nearby colleague didn't have a need to know, if they were not authorized, then that's a breach, right? You've lost control of that information. Cybersecurity, on the other hand, is focused on digital information. Their goal is on securing digital networks, the associated physical infrastructure that supports those digital networks, and discrete IT systems. And so that's really one of the biggest differences here. Again, information security is concerned with all information. Cybersecurity is concerned with digital information and the associated networks. So here's the CIA Triad. Again, these are three foundational pillars to cybersecurity: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality means that the data is accessed only by authorized personnel, that someone has a need to know, a work requirement to access this information. Integrity means that the data is accurate, complete, and tamper-proof. Availability means that the data is accessible when needed. Now, cybersecurity professionals want to maintain all three of these at all times. Losing one is a breach. If all of your data is in a data center and there's a hurricane and that knocks out the power to the data center and there's no backup, then your organization has lost availability. It may be temporary, hopefully it's only temporary, but the CIA Triad in that case has been compromised. Similarly, if all of your work files are on a SharePoint folder and you create a new folder, you put in some documents there, but you do not set the access controls for that folder appropriately, and then a colleague of yours is just poking around and they happen to get into that folder and get to see all of the personal data that's in there, then that is a loss of confidentiality. That colleague who did not have an authorized need to know has gained unauthorized access to that personal data. So again, that's a breach of confidentiality. Let's imagine that same situation with the unauthorized access on the SharePoint folder. If that colleague then goes in and mistakenly edits or changes some data, then that compromises the data's integrity. So those are just a few quick examples. Again, these are foundational concepts for privacy in general. It's important that you understand them, and some of this content may pop up on the exam. Now, again, I like to do a lot of compare and contrast. That's something that helps me learn. And so in addition to the CIA Triad, I've provided the DAD Triad here. Again, folks in cybersecurity are going to be familiar with this. You don't need to know this content for the exam, but if it helps you remember the previous slide, then that would be useful. So the opposite of confidentiality, as we saw in the example, is disclosure or unauthorized access. The opposite of integrity is alteration. Again, the data is unknowingly changed or tampered with. And the opposite of availability is destruction. The data is lost. The last concept that I want to return to here is a control, and we looked at controls earlier in the course. When we were discussing this earlier, we saw that examples of controls would be putting on your seatbelt in the car. So when we get in the car, we expose ourselves to risk. There's a chance that we're in a car accident and we suffer bodily harm. And so in order to minimize the harm that we might suffer, we use controls. We put on a seatbelt. If it's nighttime, we turn on our headlights. We're going to make sure that our tires are properly inflated, that we maintain our car. We're going to use our blinkers. We're going to have a full stop at a stop sign, etc. Now, the controls that we're concerned about as privacy professionals are going to be privacy controls. We're not going to get into a lot of specifics of those, but certainly ensuring that our organization is compliant with the law, for example, the GDPR, making sure that we are performing regular audits, that we are training our employees on how to handle personal data, that we are conducting risk assessments like DPIAs. These are all different types of controls. There are 3 broad categories of controls that you should be familiar with. They are administrative, technical, and physical controls. And again, these are measures that we implement to mitigate risk. I'm going to quickly go through examples of these categories of controls, and then we'll be all done with this lecture. Examples of administrative controls include policies, procedures, training, and signage. Examples of technical controls include firewall configuration, access logs, access controls, and intrusion detection and prevention systems. And examples of physical controls include gates, fences, locks, security cameras, guards, and guard dogs. Now, in my experience, privacy controls tend to overwhelmingly be administrative. When it comes to technical controls, this is where you're going to be relying heavily on your cybersecurity counterparts. You may also be working with folks that are implementing privacy-enhancing technologies, for example, such as differential privacy. And when it comes to physical controls, other than locking up your filing cabinets or your office, ensuring that you have your badge on you and you turn your computer off, etc., physical controls, especially with regards to your building, your office building, these are really going to be in the wheelhouse of facilities management. And so again, the vast majority of the controls that we are going to be concerned with as privacy professionals are administrative. But again, it's important that you understand all 3 categories of controls and what some examples are. In this lecture, we went over the CIA Triad. We started by defining what information security is. This is the protection of information's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Remember, concerning the difference between information security and cybersecurity, information security is concerned with the protection of all information, regardless of format. Cybersecurity focuses on the protection of systems, networks, and the data they house. And so they're looking at digital information and networks. The CIA Triad, again, CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The opposite of confidentiality is disclosure. The opposite of integrity is alteration. And the opposite of availability is destruction. Remember that a control is a measure implemented to mitigate risk. And the 3 categories of controls very broadly are administrative, technical, and physical.